Today we're going to be talking about situational eating. Do you worry about going to events where food will be out of your control? Then this episode is for you. I'm going to share some perspective shifts and some tactical tools that I use with myself and with my clients to help you feel less overwhelmed by situational eating. But first of all, what is situational eating? Well, situational eating is essentially like when you have different events, different situations where you are eating food or going to be exposed to food that you're not in control of. So it could be like a birthday party, or when you go out to dinner, or if you go to a Christmas party, when you're at the movies, if you go to the fair, things like that, that sort of leave you stressed about what you might experience or any certain challenges that might come up or how people feel about what you're consuming or eating. One of the biggest things that comes into play when you think about situational eating is something called food peer pressure. And essentially, that is when you are either eating things because other people are eating them, or you're eating things because you don't want to make someone feel uncomfortable, or you don't want to offend somebody because like maybe they made their favorite pie and you aren't eating pie, but you eat it anyways because you don't want them to feel bad. Or maybe you eat the way that someone else eats because you don't want them to feel bad about their own food choices. Another thing that people tend to notice is they tend to match their eating habits to the environment that they're in. So if they go to the movies, they'll have popcorn, or if they go to the fair, they'll have funnel cake, or if they go to a wine bar, they'll have wine. If they go to an Italian restaurant, they'll have pasta. Basically changing your eating habits, your eating patterns to suit the environment that you're in, rather than making your own choices and choosing what it is you want based on your health goals. Matching the environment can look like loading up your plate at Christmas, or eating American hot dogs on July 4th, or drinking at after work events. Things that basically you get into special occasion syndrome, where you feel like you have to have these things because you're not going to have them at any other time of the year. So you may as well have them now because otherwise you'll miss out. Eating these things is part of the ritual. It's part of the process. It's part of the habit. When Thanksgiving comes around, people eat turkey, people eat stuffing, people eat rolls, people eat all of these different things that they don't normally have. And you feel like you have to eat all these things because it's part of the experience. If you're traveling to Italy, you have to have gelato, or you have to have pasta and pizza. These types of things are basically ingrained in the way that you think, in the way that you behave, so that you don't even realize you're doing it sometimes. You're deciding to eat pasta or pizza because you happen to be in a certain situation. You happen to be at an Italian restaurant, or you happen to be in Italy. And you're deciding to have those things because of that situation. So, situational eating. And one of the things that I help work with clients on is so that you learn to make choices around what you're eating. You don't have to have the funnel cake to have the full experience at the fair. Sure, it's nice, it's fun, but if it's really not what you're craving and you don't actually want it, or you're not hungry, then realizing that you have permission to say no is often the simple shift that helps you make that choice and own your choices. I go to raves a lot, and drinking alcohol and having all kinds of greasy foods is sort of part of the process. And I'm not interested in doing those things because I know that they will make me feel sick, and they're going to impair my judgment and make me tired and sleepy. And a lot of times I love going till the end. I love being the last person standing and dancing. And so if I'm going to indulge on things like greasy food and alcohol, that's going to prevent my enjoyment of the experience. So I usually make sure that I'm still eating the same nutrition that I normally have, prioritizing protein, eating a rainbow of vegetables, making sure that I'm getting complex carbs so that I'm fueling my body for this experience. I don't not have the fun stuff. Sometimes I'll have a beer. Sometimes I'll have the funnel cake. But I'm not choosing those things because I happen to be at a rave and they happen to be available. I'm making the choice to prioritize my health, my food choices over the experience. And realizing that the experience is still enjoyable without those things. Those things don't define the experience. You don't have to eat crap just because it's available. A lot of us experience something called food FOMO, fear of missing out, fear of the future deprivation of that food, feeling like if I don't have this now, I'll never be able to have it again. And so I want to make sure that I eat it all now because otherwise, who knows? There may be an ice cream shortage and I'll never be able to have it. So, that is a very scarcity mindset way of thinking about food. And I often coach my clients through the idea of focusing on abundance and realizing that technically you can have any food that you want at any time. You can go out and buy it, you can have it at a restaurant, you can cook it at home. You can have those things anytime you want. And when you realize that the option is always available to you, it brings some of that control back so that you don't have to feel deprivation. I often will teach clients to take foods off pedestals by sampling them, having them exposing themselves to these foods at home so that when they do experience situations where they have them in the wild, out in life, they're able to be like, hey, I've already had this multiple times this week. I don't need to have it again. Certain foods are more challenging to sample at home, but for example, that decadent chocolate cake that you have after dinner when you go out to eat, try having that more at home. Like if you spent a week eating a decadent chocolate cake, by the end of the week, it would no longer have the appeal that it has. Or if you have popcorn at home, one of my clients has popcorn at home with her tea in the afternoon every day because that's one of the things that she craves. But it also means that when she goes to the movies, she doesn't buy the popcorn because she's used to having it at home. She's taken it off the pedestal and doesn't need to have it in this specific situation. So if you take away the illicitness of having these foods out at certain situations, then you're less likely to overindulge in them out in the wild, or you're less likely to have them and feel a sense of scarcity around them, Another thing that people worry about is wasting food. If you go to a restaurant and you feel like I have to clear my entire plate because I don't want this to go to waste, that's a very scarcity mindset as well. And it's an old food narrative. And we need to let go of that because I can guarantee you cleaning your plate at a restaurant is not going to solve the food crisis that we have. So when you think about it in terms of what is the best decision for you, not what is the best decision for the world. No, we don't want to create food waste. And I am all about, being green and saving the planet. But when you're thinking about cleaning your plate, that's not going to solve the world food problem. Okay. What would make more sense would be to divide it in half and take half of it home so that you can have it for another meal tomorrow. Even if, for example, when I eat at home, I will often not finish a plate and put it in the fridge and then finish it later in the day. And I'm never wasting food because I'm always going to eat it at some point. I don't have to eat it all now. I do not have to be part of the clean plate club. That's an old narrative, and we need to stop perpetuating that. But I think one of the biggest tools that you can use when you're thinking about situational eating is really to hone in on what it is that you want, what it is that your goals are, remembering what your weight loss goals are or your body change goals are, and choosing to own your decisions, which can feel really challenging sometimes, especially when people are confronting you about things. But, rather than basing what you're putting on your plate on the environment that you're in or the situation that you're in, you make the choice to have things that are going to support your goals. And, maybe you sample a little bit of the French fries and maybe you have a little bit of the stuffing and you have a little bit of this and have a little bit of this, but you start with the basic balanced plate. And you start with making sure that you're following through on your non-negotiables when it comes to eating, prioritizing protein, eating a rainbow of veggies, complex carbs, all of those things, instead of just filling your plate with the stuff that's available because that's what the situation calls for. It really comes down to taking ownership of your choices and realizing that it's up to you what you eat in that situation. Sure, you might not be in control of what is offered, but you're in control of what you put on your plate and what you put in your mouth. And that's not to say don't have the fun stuff. Absolutely have the fun stuff, but do it strategically. Do it in a way where you've met all your other nutritional needs and then you have the little bit of dessert. You don't have to have a whole slice of cake. You can have a bit of a cake. You can have a bit of the cup. Obviously, you're not going to eat half a cupcake, but like maybe you share the cupcake with your friend, you know? So you can find a way to make healthy choices while still not feeling deprived and not feeling left out of the situation. I will still go to events and still only eat to 80% full because I know that I will feel better than if I overeat and feel stuffed and then feel guilty about why did I eat all those things. One of the things we work through with a lot of clients is when people make comments about your food choices. And having ownership over what you're choosing is really the key to navigating that, because people are going to make comments. People are harsh and cruel and insensitive, and they often criticize you because they see a fault in themselves in the way that you're eating. They often criticize you because they see you eating healthy and they realize how unhealthy they might be eating, and so they feel judgmental about themselves and often lash out at you because of that. So just remember that when you're experiencing this and the comments that people make, it's not necessarily about you. So don't take it personally and stand up, own your choices. And you don't have to like explain why you're choosing something, but if that makes it easier, then by all means, share why you're making these healthy choices. Set some boundaries. Be like, I'm eating healthier because I'm prioritizing my health right now, and I'm feeling like I don't want to feel sluggish, and I don't want to feel like I overate or I overdid it when I don't actually need those things, you know? Or maybe even be like, hey, I actually had chocolate cake last week. I don't need any more this week. Or I'm just not eating. I'm eating what I want right now, but I'm not overdoing it, and I'm staying in my power and in control of what I'm consuming. And I'm not eating based on situations. I'm eating based on the goals that I'm working towards. I'm practicing eating moderately so that I can have delicious foods and I can enjoy a sample of these sweet treats without overdoing it. I'm working on not restricting my food and making sure that I'm meeting all my nutritional needs with every meal so that I don't end up emotional eating or overeating later. Not that you need to share all of that, but sometimes people like explanations, and sometimes it shuts them up. I think a big one for a lot of people is understanding the triggers that are going to come up when you're out. So, you know, if you go out with certain people and those people tend to overeat or tend to order junk food or tend to drink alcohol in excess, you know, are you succumbing to peer pressure? Are you following their lead, or are you able to stay in your lane and choose what you want based on your goals? Noticing little triggers like that. If there are certain restaurants that you go to and you're like, I always have this thing and I always have to have this thing and I feel like I can't not have the thing when I go to this restaurant, know that, be aware of it, and just be mindful when you do make those choices that why am I making these choices? Why do I feel I need to make these choices? And just question your actions and your responses and how you're behaving around these people or these situations. I mean, one example is when women notoriously order salads on dates. And I don't know about you, but I hate salads. I don't enjoy eating them, and I'm not about to order a salad just to show a man that I don't overeat. If I want the steak, I'm gonna have the steak. If I want the burger, I'm gonna have the burger. You know, I'm not afraid to eat in front of men. I feel like that's a stigma that is somewhat perpetuated, that, you know, we have to eat and we have to eat light when we go on dates. Honestly, that's foolish. You should eat what you want. Obviously, if you're gonna have some fun time after, you might want to not overeat, but obviously, you know, do what works for you. But I think prioritizing what it is that you want to eat that's going to support your goals, even when you're on a date, is really important. Something that I ask my clients to practice sometimes when we're working on high level techniques is to practice sharing your food with others. And that's really hard for me, honestly. I hate sharing food with people, but it's a tool that has utility. And I think practicing it can really help in these types of situations because, you know, you learn how to sort of surf the disappointment of not being able to eat the whole thing. So for example, the other day, my boyfriend reached over and he grabbed a couple of my fries, and I in my head, my gut reaction was like, oh my God, don't touch my food. Don't touch my fries. Those are my fries. But like, did I need those fries? There were only 5 fries. I still had the rest of the plate. I wasn't going to run out of fries. I was going to get my fill of fries. And him eating a couple of my fries didn't make me any, it didn't cause any more hunger. I was already satisfied hunger wise. And it was just a mental, like, oh, no, that's mine. Practicing being in that feeling of, I'm not going to eat the whole thing. I don't need to eat the whole thing. I don't have to eat the whole thing is useful. And it helps you navigate what it feels like to be full versus what it feels like to just eat all of it because it's there. So to recap, we've talked about food peer pressure, special occasion syndrome, food FOMO. I've talked about practicing exposure therapy and intermittent sampling of different foods so that you take them off pedestals and you become more comfortable around them when you go out in the world. I talked about having an abundance mindset around food rather than living in scarcity and feeling like, oh, I'm never going to be able to have this again, or there's not going to be enough. I also talked about wasting food and how you don't have to worry about that the way that you think you do. In fact, leaning into your goals and what you want and your fullness levels is more important than it is, worrying about whether or not the food's going to end up in the trash. Obviously, I don't want you wasting food, but if that's an old narrative that you're living on and that you're cleaning your plate because of that fear, find a way to take it home, find a way to create another meal, find a way to give it to someone else in need rather than cleaning the plate because you feel like you have to clean your plate. I talked about the importance of sticking to your non-negotiables when it comes to balancing a meal, even when you're out at a situation or an event, and making sure that you're prioritizing protein, you're getting a rainbow of vegetables, you're getting adequate complex carbs and healthy fats, and that you're eating the things that are going to meet your nutrient needs, as well as making sure that you're satisfied and not deprived. So you still get to have the fun things, but just not all out. Don't go all in on all of them, And then ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about ownership and owning your choices and being confident in your ability to say, hey, I'm out at this event and I'm going to eat based on my goals, not the situation that I'm in. So hopefully some of this was useful. If you liked it, share it with a friend, subscribe, and make sure to grab my ultimate free meal guide linked in the show notes, because that's going to give you some tactical tools to help you create easy, quick, nutritious, and delicious meals as fast as possible. Ciao!